Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Wow, I was just this morning finishing up a decode on the film Nope by Jordan Peele, and you're not going to believe what I found. Now, I don't know if anyone's found this already, but it was done by Monkey Paw Production, and all you got to do is add an X at the end, and you have monkeypox. Now, if there was nothing else in the film that referenced anything that's going on in our current reality, then I wouldn't have even shown this to you. But we're going to do a full decode on this film later in the week. And I found all kinds of stuff relating back to monkeypox. Now, here's the problem. This film finished production before monkeypox was ever a thing. And they show a crazed chimpanzee that goes on a murderous spree triggered by electromagnetic radiation. So I can't wait to break that down for you. I've already got all the screenshots ready to go. I've got to edit it, and then I've got to put it together, and we'll do that, I believe, on Wednesdays, I think, when we're going to do that. But I could not believe it. Now, you and I both know that they program this kind of stuff, right? It's almost like gaslighting, but the better job we do at exposing it, this is why my decodes are so detailed. Sometimes it's almost too detailed. Some people are like, well, you can't, you're stretching this, you're stretching that. No, none of it's a stretch. You actually have to show that level of detail for people to finally understand what's going on. Now, it was no different in this Venom comic book character, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. The Venom franchise. Now, it's a series of about 3 films. There's a 2007 Spider-Man 3 film in which Venom appeared. There was a 2018 film that was called Venom. And then there was a 2021 film called Venom 2. We're only going to look at 2 of those films today that predated the pandemic, and I'm doing that for a reason. That's because I'm going to demonstrate to you that all of this kind of segues and links into all this. Now, some people believe that venom is an ingredient in something that a lot of people are taking right now. And if you ever get confused during these decodes, there's always help in the chat. If you get lost with the coded language that we have to use because of YouTube, just simply ask in the chat and people will help you. People that have been around for a long time and already know what all this stuff means. Now, as always, you know me, we're all human, right? And sometimes I pick some of these things up and I don't expect to find much. Because, I'm thinking there's no way that I'm going to find something again this time. But that's because sometimes I have not enough faith in the Holy Spirit, that it's prompting me to look at things, prompting you to tell me to look at things, and me picking and choosing which things we're going to look at. And when I picked up the Venom franchise, it did not disappoint. I was shocked. Remember the panpipes that we've been talking all about? Pan's pipes cut from Artemis's nymph. Her name was Syringe. She was turned into a sea of hollow reeds that were growing in a swamp. Well, that's exactly what was depicted in the Spider-Man movie from 2007. So, let's take a look at this. Now, it's kind of hard to piece together the timeline. The 2018 film and the 2007 film, they kind of overlap each other. It's almost like an alternate ending, so to speak, because Venom meets his end 2 different ways in the 2 different movies. So they can't both be the same ending, right? So you guys are just going to have to decide what all this means and how it all shakes out in terms of the timeline. Now, I may or may not take a look at the 2021 Venom movie. I guess we'll decide that, after we get done with these decodes. Now, what is Venom? What is it? Let's go in here. Venom is an alien parasite that infects a human host and gives the host the ability to shapeshift. But it's not just any human host. The host's DNA has to match up somewhat with the symbiote. Is all this starting to sound familiar? It should, because it's all about the matching up of the symbiote with our DNA. And they're having a hard time with that, aren't they? Now, this film, the Spider-Man portion of it, came out before programmable matter was ever a thing. That didn't start gaining traction until later than that, probably 2000, I want to say 10, 11, 12. That's when people really started talking about programmable matter. Nicholson 1968 was one of the premier YouTube channels that were talking about this in very high detail. And even then, it really hadn't taken off yet in the mainstream. But now, this is all these people can talk about, is this black goo, this programmable matter. But yet, Hollywood was already depicting this stuff in Spider-Man 3 in 2007. Now, we're going to start today's decode off with the 2018 Venom film. And the first thing you're going to notice is that the word Venom in reverse almost spells the word money. I brought it into this program to flip it around for you guys so you guys can see that Venom almost spells money. I'm going to turn the volume up here a little bit. Now, we're saying, okay, well, what does that mean, Casey? Well, I've always told you that the money is the serpent. It just is. Greenbacks, the green scales of the serpent. You know, I know that some people want to believe in money. They want to hold on to it, as much of it as they can. That's because the serpent created this economic system. He created the system by which we need things. And so we all become slaves to the serpent economic system so we can get money. Because it wasn't about that before. It was about trade, wasn't it? That was God's original plan, was trading with each other. Sharing our gifts with each other, which connects us to each other, creates a bond between us, doesn't it? We become dependent on each other. We learn how to have some kind of social responsibility because of that dependency on one another, don't we? But what does money do? Money separates people. It puts you in a silo and makes you want to just get all you can and try to get over on other people that you're competing with to get all that you can. And it separates people. I've seen it 100 times in my life already, you guys. Money separates people. I always talk about my former best friend who is now since passed. And his family was all about money. And he hated money. I'm not going to tell you his name just because for privacy concerns since he has passed away. But he hated money because of what it did to people. But then he had his own money problems as well. His money problems had to do with basically compensating for the fact that he hated money, so he would just give it all away, including his father's money. Just in all the wrong ways. You know, going to a bar and buying rounds for everybody in the bar. He was so desperate for friendship and connection, but then he would be disappointed over and over again when he would pour out all his pockets and still not connect with anything. Reminded me a lot of my dad. My dad was the same way. My dad was an alcoholic, and he just always just blew his money to all the wrong people, and then he would get very angry when people would betray him or steal his money or whatever. So this is, many of you could probably relate to this personality type. This is why I'm bringing it up. But the other reason why I'm bringing it up is because this friend that I just found out recently that he had passed away, and they said that he had passed away from the flu. You know what I'm talking about. But then when I dug deeper, because there was a Facebook page in his memory, but there was another man with him in the Facebook page. And so I asked some people, some of the admins in that group, I said, hey, who is this other guy and how exactly did he die? And they said that that was his roommate and that they both got the flu and they both died on the same day in the hospital. And of course, I didn't say anything because most people are asleep. But how in the heck does that happen? How do two people get the flu on the same day, end up in the hospital, in the protocol, and then die on the same day? There's something else going on, isn't there? But yet everyone sees it and nobody realizes what's going on. They don't get it. Do they? They don't get it. You guys, the only way that can really truly happen is a set, I gotta be careful here, method of treatment. Right? Now, I couldn't believe this hit so close to home for me. Now, I asked, I go, well, was he sick with anything? No. Now, this friend that I had, I know I'm going off onto a little tangent here, but you guys need to hear this. Yes, Lori. Lori's correct. The only thing that this guy had, he was a smoker. He smoked a lot. So there goes that theory out the window. I know people were saying, oh, that's supposed to protect you. Well, he and his roommate were smokers. But one thing I remember about this friend that I had is that he had excellent, I guess you call it lung capacity. He was 10 years older than me, but yet we'd be hiking around. He was in, I think, his 50s and I was in my 40s. And we'd be hiking around fishing and that guy never got tired. I'm like, where do you get your energy? So he was actually a pretty healthy 50-year-old. He had some stamina, never really got tired, and he pretty much smoked all day. And I was like, I just remember that being the case. But he always had this panicky side to him, where he was always, what's the word I'm looking for, when people are always concerned about their health, constantly going to doctors, because his mother had died of lung cancer. Now, I'm telling you all this because this is a real life story that can help us learn something, can't it? And so he was very afraid. He would get panicked. He would go to the doctor. He always thought there was something wrong with him, but they would do all these tests and nothing was ever wrong. He did suffer from chronic heartburn, but I think it was because he just drank too much. Yeah, hypochondriac. Thanks, Lori. Lori's on it today. And so I was shocked to hear that this is how he died. Unbelievable. Now, we had fallen out of favor for a while because he had this side to him where he just got self-destructive. Let's put it that way. But then the times when he was mentally healthy, we had a lot of fun. We'd fish. He was like my fishing buddy. But the thing is that I just couldn't believe it. And I felt bad because I hadn't talked to him in 2 years before he passed away. And he was on, it was weird. He was like on my mind. I was like, oh, I wonder what happened to him. And then when I went to look into it, that's when I found out he was gone. But interesting, right? Interesting. So let's get back into this. Went off on a tangent there. Let's get back into Venom, which is money backwards. Let's keep going with this. Now, Tom Hardy stars in this film, and he's an investigative journalist digging into corporate corruption and conspiracies and stuff like that. And he finds himself getting too close to this thing he's investigating, which is this alien programmable matter that came from a comet, from all places. Looks like black goo. Let's watch this.
And then at 19, you discovered a gene therapy that literally doubles the life expectancy of pancreatic cancer.
You know what it is? I've always believed that space exploration is crucial in our quest to cure everything that ails us here on Earth.
Now, you heard him. This is Tom Hardy. He's the investigative journalist, and he's interviewing the CEO of this biotech company who brought the goo back to Earth from that comet. But you notice he brings up the number 19. Now, what is the number 19? This is a specific number, and you're going to see it appear over and over again in this film. 19 is the 19-year cycle of sacrifice. Crow vid 19, 19 hijackers, flight 19, the 19th floor, 19 tridents on the facade of the Slim Towers, 19 years before Crow vid 19. Now, much later in the film, in this next scene, he actually rides on trolley number 19.
That you're gonna go and explore space.
But if you think about everything we found in the oceans and on land, isn't it time to look up there to this plethora of untapped resources?
And you have stops.
Now, like I said, they find the black goo on an expedition to a comet, of course, which in the past we've looked into these comets. And we found out that in the past people believed that comets brought plague, like the Black Death. They say that it coincided with a near-Earth approach of a comet. I don't know whether this is true or not, or whether to believe that, but it would be the perfect cover story, wouldn't it, for a deadly pathogen to say that, oh, it came from outer space. That it wasn't from Earth. It came from outer space. That's what they would say, right? So, you heard the CEO, and he starts to make this connection between advancement in medicine and space exploration. They always like to couple those two together, don't they? Now, why would they do that? Well, by coupling these two things together, they can continue to get funding for both, can't they? They want you to believe that one is dependent on the other. So in other words, the pathogen comes from space. Well, the only cure we're going to find is in space. This is what they're trying to program you with here.
We're good. All right. Thank you. Excuse me. Oh, it doesn't work because I bought a DVD of your cousin and it was in Mandarin.
So, of course, there are multiple Chinese mentions throughout the film. Now, we saw this in the movie Tower Heist. We saw it in the movie Toxic Skies. They have to mention this Chinese component. And we all know what that means now. But when you were watching this movie, you probably had no idea. Let's watch all these Chinese mentions.
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
Now understand, these are separate parts throughout the film. This isn't just one scene. This is multiple scenes. So here's a second scene. There's the Chinese food in the refrigerator. Here's her dumping Chinese food.
Hey, Dad, how you...
No, I didn't realize that you were on the call too.
Yeah, I'm here.
What is...
It's like all that they eat is Chinese food in the entire film. So that's a clue, isn't it? That's not random. Because one time it should have been Italian food, or another time it could have been Mexican food. But it's always Chinese food. Now, these people can't help themselves when it comes to mentioning the Bible. I remember when I was younger and my mother, she would hear biblical references in films. And back then, you know, humanity was so asleep that the programming of hearing a biblical reference in a film basically made the rest of the lies in the film okay. Right? This was the programming. My mom would like get excited. She goes, see, they mentioned a Bible verse there. Isn't that cool? And then now that I'm older and wiser, I realize that all that did, those biblical references, it's like seasoning food to make the rest of the bad food taste better. To make the lies taste better. To make it okay to the sleep people. Because almost every time they do mention God, they're blaspheming him in some way. Here he tells a story of Abraham and Isaac. And he's blaspheming God's wisdom in his test of Abraham and his son Isaac. Watch this.
See, war, poverty, a planet on the brink of collapse. So now it's down to you and me to put this right.
Isaac. You know that's a biblical name?
Yes, sir.
Isaac. You know that's a biblical name?
We're willing to sacrifice the one thing
Most precious to you, and Abraham was willing. You know what's always impressed me about that story?
I don't know what kind of God would ask that of someone, but it doesn't change anything for me.
I don't know what kind of God would ask that of someone, but basically he's doing the exact same thing. He's sacrificing this guy whose name is Isaac as the first experiment to see if the black goo would bind to his DNA. And so now you're starting to see the correlation. This is basically a dark side version of the biblical story. This is a retelling, slandering God, saying what God would ask a father to sacrifice his son. Basically, this is what they're saying here.
Isaac is still a hero.
And this time, Isaac, we can. This time, I will not abandon us.
Now, let's keep going because this gets even way more specific. The next scene you're going to see brings in the topic of overpopulation and climate change.
We are literally a generation away from an uninhabitable Earth. Great. Overpopulation and climate change. These are two things that Drake cannot control.
Drake is trying to put human beings and aliens together.
So, Drake is trying to put humans and aliens together. This is all about steel mixing with watery clay, as the Bible says that they will try to do. It's about the twin spirits inhabiting one host body.
Just so they can live in space.
We call them hosts.
Now, in this scene, I caught a really good image of what's on Tom Hardy's t-shirt, which, even though this is some kind of design, it's actually the all-seeing eye pyramid, of course. Down here it says penny gold, because penny is the serpent's gold, copper is the serpent's gold, and the image on his shirt actually doubles as a square and compass. Watch, I put it in slow motion so you can kind of see it a little bit better.
In lab sector 3.
Oh no, Maria!
Now, Hardy is obviously infected with the black goo, and they call that a parasite or symbiote. Watch.
I'm hearing a voice.
Auditory hallucinations are actually very good.
Oh, hey, Dan. How you
You know, I didn't realize that you were on the call too.
doing? I'm sick.
Well, Eddie, you have a parasite. They're not exactly sure how you got it, but it would explain the fever.
That is the deal. That is why we are here. Cooperate, and you might just survive.
You were killing me? What is that?
Love the dog. Can't have the dog.
Now, here's where things, as I always say, get really, really creepy. Because this dog right here, his name is Gemini. And he gets possessed by the black goo. Watch this. We'll talk about what that means here.
Gemini.
Already we talked about the dog. Okay. Love the dog. Can't have the dog.
Sorry, Gemini.
We're gonna get them.
Now, what does all this mean? Gemini getting possessed by the black goo. Well, Gemini means twin spirits. Everything we've been talking about. Trump is a Gemini. And we long since realized that he's probably harboring the Janus spirit, which is the two-faced spirit. Now, I believe all presidents are possessed at the time of their inauguration. That's why the inauguration ceremony is so protected. But Trump's a little bit different. He was really good at saying one thing while doing another, completely opposite action of what he said, in plain sight. And people just didn't even realize it was happening. Now, I saw a clip of him on a channel called Faith Fuego. She comes to this channel. She's in the comments section and sometimes the chat. And she captured a clip where he was saying that he had to make a deal with the devil to get something passed. It was him in his own words. Who says that? Now, this makes sense to all of us that have been closely watching, because at his rallies, he plays sympathy for the devil. I don't know how a Christian could follow a person like that. And the Devil's Advocate film was filmed at his penthouse. And we get this forked tongue effect with Trump. The Janus, the two faces of the Janus. He says he wants freedom, right? Always talks about freedom, but yet he endorses national ID. He endorsed the red flag laws that unfairly take people's pop sticks away from them. Also, he says he wants a strong economy, but yet he bankrupted America by handing out all those stimulus checks. I think it was $2 to $3 trillion in stimulus checks, which we said the day those checks came out would cause record inflation. Everybody forgets that, don't they? And then look at exactly what happened. He shut down small businesses. That doesn't make a strong economy. There was a different way to handle that. And I don't care if he was being opposed by whoever, he's the president. Also, he says he wants to protect life, right? But then most of his life, he was pro-choice. And then when Roe v. Wade got overturned by federal courts, he said that that decision would hurt Republicans. So there's this forked tongue effect. I've never seen anything like it. I've seen politicians lie, but this is different. Here's another example. He says he hates China, right? He speaks negatively in a derogatory way about China. Like if you were to look at a voter who maybe, an uneducated voter, let's say, they would tell you, if you asked them what their perception of Trump was with regards to his feelings about China, they would say, oh, he's going to stick it to China. He doesn't like China. But then we've heard Trump say comments about how he respects China, how they clamp down on their citizens during the spam epidemic, and how they're tough on their citizens. We've heard him say that. And also, he's rolled out 5G so he can compete with them. And of course, pick up all of the surveillance capabilities that comes along with 5G as well, right? So he speaks out of both sides of his mouth, a split tongue. Those are just 3 or 4 examples. There are dozens more. So you have to ask yourself, is this dog being possessed? Is this Trump? Is this really what this is about here?
Sound at 4 to 6,000 hertz is lethal.
Now, this part talks about the only thing that can kill Venom is fire and sound frequencies at 4 to 6,000 hertz. And I believe what they're really depicting here is a connection between the parasite injection and the 5G. The two work together.
The sound frequency in MRI is really harmful for him.
Dan just needs to do another MRI.
No MRI.
Now, we're going to jump off of Venom, the movie, and go back to the future. Back to Spider-Man 3, 2007, because this is where the rails come off. This movie is actually more specific to our current timeline than the Venom movie, which was even more recent. Because this is crazy. Water towers, dark water towers. The entire film is actually centered around these dark water towers. But it's also centered around something else. Spider-Man proposing to Mary Jane. And the entire movie is about a ring. A diamond ring that he wants to give to Mary Jane. Rings are coronas. In fact, during an eclipse, when the sun peeks out behind the moon, they call it a diamond ring. And now your brain's starting to turn because you're realizing why the diamond ring is the symbol for marriage. It's the marriage between the sun and the moon during an eclipse. The two coming together. Now, why are you just hearing now? Why are you hearing all this now for the first time in your life from a YouTube channel? You're probably wondering, aren't you? because that's what it means, right? Well, you're hearing this now because God wants you to give your life to his son so that you can be saved. Diamond rings are pagan. This is sun worship. It's the merging between the sun and the moon, the female and the male. And they'll never tell you that when you go to buy a diamond ring, because it's all pagan sun worship, and they want you to be doing it without knowing you're doing it. So, guess what Spider-Man 3 is all about? It's all about the union between humanity and the black goo. That's the true marriage being depicted here. The bride of the serpent instead of the bride of Christ. Now, I didn't include the clips on the diamond ring. You can see that for yourself in Spider-Man 3, or you can recall from your memory that it was all about this ring, and Spider-Man kept losing it. And no matter what, he had to protect this ring, this coronal ring, didn't he? Now, what you're going to see next is another aspect of this film, the Dark Water Towers. Now, this is chilling because we just discovered the Dark Water Towers about a month ago, didn't we? I had no idea that they would show up like this in this movie. But yet, here it is. Almost like we're in some kind of time loop. Now, the first we found these water towers was when one of you actually asked me to look at the movie Dark Waters. I can't remember who asked me to look at it, but Dark Waters was about a water tower and a girl getting stuck in a water tower and dying. And then that related to a real life incident that happened years later of a Chinese woman who basically was found in a water tower on the top of a hotel. Now, before I show you all the places that the Dark Water Tower showed up in Spider-Man 3, we had already figured out that the Dark Water Tower basically symbolized possession by a dark spirit. They do this through deprivation, so these water towers are also doubling as a deprivation tank. And watch this. Remember, these are separate shots throughout the entire movie, and they can't help themselves but put these water towers all throughout the movie. You can't make this up, you guys. There it is again. Hidden. And again. Now this is crazy because here they give you even a better clue. Because this is the Goblin, or the Goblin's son, and he shoots out 2 shots. 2 shots.
Sometimes these things in nature, when they bind, they can be hard to unbind. It has the characteristics of a symbiote, which needs to bond to a host to survive.
So there we're getting a little bit more of a description about the twin spirits inhabiting the same body and how they do it. Now, we've talked a lot about umbrellas. Umbrellas are needles, ferrules. And here it is, right here in Spider-Man. Now, of course, it's raining, but watch, you'll see when I show you the nope decode in a couple days, umbrellas appear in that too. There shouldn't be an umbrella there, but yet there it is. It's the dark water. The injection has to happen, and then there has to be the frequencies, and that's where the possession occurs. Now, at this point, after Spider-Man's been infected with the black goo, he figures out a way to shake it off of him. How does he do it? He goes into a ringing bell tower, and he doesn't realize it at that point because he doesn't understand that it's the frequency of the bell that's disrupting the black goo enough to unbind from him, right? But this is kind of backwards because it's the opposite. It's the frequency that makes it bind to you. So they're showing you the opposite here. So Spider-Man shakes off the goo, but then it goes into his friend Brock. And that's Brock laying on the ground. He's the new Venom. So whoever gets the black goo becomes the new Venom. And Spider-Man can't defeat him at first. But then he makes a connection between the sound frequencies, and he realizes that in order to disrupt the connection and separate the goo from his friend Brock, he has to employ the sound frequencies. He finds this out by accident by knocking over a pile of syringes. Casey, those aren't syringes, they're hollow pipes. Hollow pipes are syringes. We've already established that fact. Now, this brings up a whole host of questions, doesn't it? Because the sound comes from a series of hollow reeds, like Pan's pipes, Syringes, which is syringe, which is Artemis's nymph, the ancient clue that hypodermic needles would one day be used to bring the disease and to bring the cure. As Spider-Man traps Venom in a circle of vibrating syringes, essentially. Like the ring that he tried to give Mary Jane, except this ring is different. One ring to rule them all. Now, who is understanding this? Who gets all this? Well, the people that make it, obviously, but probably the 1% of you that come to this channel are actually understanding what's happening here, what's really happening. This is all foreshadowing of a future agenda. The hollow pipes. Wow. And this raises more questions. Are you ready for this? Now, this just popped into my head right now as a gift of the Holy Spirit. Because when you look at the ceiling of a church, you get what looks like the underside of an umbrella. Do you not? And the ferrule of the inside of this umbrella is the steeple coming out of the top, isn't it? Which is the pointy thing of the umbrella. And what is down below? The organ, which is a bunch of pipes. Here's a perfect shot of this right here, no pun intended. Pan's pipes cut off Syringes in the swamp with the umbrella on the ceiling, with the ferrule sticking out of the top. Now you know why I don't go into churches anymore. Now you know why my faith is much stronger than when I went into any church. God gave us the Bible. He gave us the sacrifice of His Son as forgiveness for our sins. Jesus did not build church buildings, even though he was a carpenter. Modern religion has it all wrong. Pan's pipes, you guys, right there, hiding in plain sight. Now let's finish this up here. This is crazy. There's the shot right there. A ring of pipes. A ring of syringes around Now Brock meets his end. He loves the power so much because in real life he's kind of a nobody. So Eddie Brock goes back in to try to get reinfected with the goo and ends up exploding. And of course, more dark water umbrella syringes at the funeral. And if you had any doubts, James Jameson is the two-faced Janus. Right? He pretends to be nice, but then he's always going after Spider-Man, isn't he?
Pack your things. Get out of my building.
I was just...
You're fired! Pack your things. Get out of my building.
I was just...
You're fired!
You're fired. The signature tagline. And now you're starting to see how all of this fits together in a perfectly orchestrated puzzle, with the roles of all these real-life actors being depicted in this film and all films before they ever reach the world stage. And now you see it because you have eyes to see, because you know now what you're looking for. Let's go into the chat for a bit. See if I missed anything. Sometimes I do. You're fired, exactly. That was 2007. You guys. It's in the name. Now, when we decode the Nope film, which is about an alien abductions, basically, kind of, is what it's about. There's a little bit of a twist to it. But, the actual name that they give this alien spaceship is Jean Jacket, which is weird, right? Like a denim jacket. It's actually called a jean jacket, which is JJ, which has to be the Janus Two-Face thing again. I couldn't think of any other connection there other than that. Other than, it being blue denim, so it's blue blood. But I looked up what this animal actually is, and in the film it's actually a jellyfish, and they do not have blue blood. They actually don't have a circulatory system. But they do take on heavy metals, copper being one of them, in order to use it in their physiology. But there are a lot of blue references in the film Nope. So we'll cover that in detail. Yes, denim rhymes with venom. Good job. Waters above. Awesome. So you guys are smart. 10-10. Yes, Lori. J is 10. So it's 10-10. So that's like 20. Star Drive misses his jean jacket. Alright. What else do you have in here? Yeah, JJ 10-10 maybe. Decoder ring. Full metal jacket. Yes. Good thinking. So full metal jacket. That movie. Alright. Now, despite the shocking nature of what we just presented to you, there is no need for fear. If anything, this should increase your faith so that you understand the matrix that's in and around you. Otherwise, none of this stuff makes sense. You ever watch a movie and you're like, what is... That scene was weird. Like who writes this stuff? And you're thinking, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, why put that scene in there? And now you're understanding that every second of these scenes has already been written by the enemy. Okay? So, now you're understanding. So now you've been given knowledge that you can now not walk into the traps of the enemies. Now, what are those traps? Well, we can't really tell you what the traps are because hopefully you got enough out of this decode to know what the main trap is. I can't tell you what the trap is because they'll say, oh, you can't say that, right? But you guys all know. You guys all know. So, oh, wow, Brooke, jacking with your jeans. Wow, great. So jean jacket is jacking with your jeans. Good job. Wow. You guys surprise me sometimes. Yeah, everything is in reverse with these people. So jean jacket is jacking with your jeans. Exactly. Let me see. Let me pull that up. Here's the Wikipedia page for the actual UFO that's in the film Nope. And they say here that it's actually jean jacket and it's actually a jellyfish. Here you can kind of see it. For some reason it's attracted to balloons. We'll get into all that. I don't want to give it all away, but they've got helium balloons that it eats. Everything we've been talking about, you guys. Everything. Literally everything. So jean jacking. Okay, cool. Awesome, Marcy. Marcy's got it. Sometimes I dig so deep I don't see the things right on the surface, which that was like right there in our faces, right? You're welcome, Rachel. This is a labor of love. This is what God has me. I've sacrificed a lot of other things in my life to be able to do this every day. But this is what God has me on, and so this is what I'm going to do, you know? And I have to endure till the end. A lot of things in my life that I don't have anymore because of what he has me doing here with all of you. All right, what else do we have? Jackie Kennedy says all right, gene hacking. That's what it's always been about. Hugh Jackman, hacking your genes. Most High comes in a cloud. Yes, there's a lot of that being depicted in the new Nope film as well. Gene jacket could imply a capsid protein shell of the viron's DNA. Okay. All right. All right, you guys. So tomorrow, I think, though, we're going to be doing a headlines show. Got some important headlines to go over. Some crazy lady was in the woods pretending like her car broke down and killed this guy. They got in a gunfight. It was so sad. The girlfriend survived. We're going to talk about the agenda and how they report these stories, and they leave out some of the most important aspects of the story because of their agendas. A lot of them are race agendas. They don't want to make certain races look bad, so they kind of soften what you're seeing in some stories, but then hype up and pump up other stories based on the person being of a different race. It's crazy when you actually look at what's going on. We're also going to be looking at the world desertification that's happening right now. Things are drying out, but it's not all over the world. It's in pockets of the world because other parts of the world have way too much rain and others do not. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well as some other headlines. Now on deck for like next week, we have the sequel to Game of Thrones. Can you believe it? The sequel to Game of Thrones is coming out. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even know they were working on this. It might be a prequel, but it's called House of the Dragon. So we'll get into that. Now, apparently already they're saying there's a lot of too many sex scenes in here, so we're going to obviously skip over those and not show you any of that. We're going to look at the symbols, trying to focus on the symbolism, okay? Because it's very important, this whole Game of Thrones thing. This is one of the most popular franchises in the history of all of this. So we'll be breaking that down as well at some point next week. And that's pretty much all I have for you for now. Some updates on everything that's going on. I love each and every one of you. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. Much love. Take care and be safe, you guys.